Choosing the right jewelry, part 2. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the width of the jewelry and body piercing basics, episode number 46. So you should stick around. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So, as I talk to you, I'm talking to you as someone who has been in the industry for a long period of time and has worked a lot with choosing the correct width of jewelry that's going to work best either in the healing piercing or after the piercing is healed. So when we're talking about width, what exactly are we talking about? The width of the jewelry is from inside to inside. So if we're doing a ring, it's the widest part of the ring from the inside to the other inside. With curved barbells, we're talking about the inside of the curve. This part on the bottom, if you were imagine a magic, banana. And we're measuring from the inside of the ball to the other inside of the ball. With straight barbells, it's basically from inside of the ball to the inside of the ball. With plugs and various other types of jewelry, it's usually the overall length that we are measuring. Things like nostril screws and L-bends and etc., usually those are custom bit to fit the customer, so there's really not a standard when it comes to sizing. With that out of the way, let's get into what we're looking for each different style of jewelry. Let's start out with straight jewelry, post jewelry, barbells, labret studs, and plugs. The first thing is when we're dealing with barbells and other straight posts is we need to allow a little extra room for swelling. This depends on the piercing. Of course, in the mouth, we're going to oversize it a little bit because we're going to see more swelling. Other piercings, it may only be a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, while in some cases as far as a 1/4 of an inch, sometimes with some oral piercings. Straight posts, of course, are always best and ideal for areas of the body that have low profiles, where you want to have limited contact with things around you. So having a long version of that out there can cause issues. So it's kind of trying to find that sweet spot between long enough to allow for the swelling, but short enough that it's not going to constantly get bumped and come in contact with stuff all the time and constantly be moving and shifting in the piercing. That's why a lot of times with ear piercings we'll oversize it a little bit and then suggest stopping by in a couple of weeks to possibly downsize it if there's some issues or if it seems like it's constantly getting caught on things. We'd much rather have that too big and not have to deal with the possibility of it impacting than have it too small and have the tissue grow and swell beyond the length of it and cause all kinds of very uncomfortable, painful, and annoying problems. With healed piercings, usually you want it as close to the width of the actual piercing as possible. I always use the analogy that when you're fitting a barbell especially, and this can kind of be with any type of jewelry, is they're kind of like a good pair of jeans. You want them tight enough that they look good, but not so tight that you can't breathe or get them on. There should always be a little bit of play because the body is organic. You're organic. You're going to expand. You're going to contract. It's just part of the nature of life. So it's a good idea to have just a little bit of wiggle room in there when you're picking out that jewelry to fit into that finally well-healed piercing. Okay, now the exception to the rule as far as having it tight to the body to avoid contact is with areas of the body that expand and contract a lot. For example, your tongue or male genitals. You always want it a little oversized so that when that tissue's at its widest length, when things expand and the piercing expands with it, you want it so wide or wide enough that you're not having a lot of contact with the jewelry and it's not too tight. Lastly, on barbells, in straight and post type jewelry. This is kind of throwing in an extra thing. With plugs, you do want them a little wider than your lobe. Having them too tight, especially if they have any type of raised edge or closure, can cause a lot of issues, trap a lot of contaminants and other stuff, and make your piercing smell like an unfortunate homeless person who hasn't bathed for like 6 months. So you always want to have a little bit of breathing room, and you don't want to compact your lobe. You want it kind of wider, because sometimes even when you're just stretching a piercing, there'll be a little bit of swelling, so you need to allow for that. And most good, reputable manufacturers will make various different widths, especially with their metal jewelry, plugs, or eyelets, and etc., where they start at their 3/8, 7/16, and ½ inch. So find the one that fits right for yours. Lobes, regardless of what people think, are vastly different in width from person to person. We're all unique little flowers. So that moves us on to rings, circular barbells, and things that go like this. With these, when you're piercing, they do need to be massively oversized in most cases, because with the curvature, we want it as flat as possible for the part that's going through the piercing. For example, let's pretend this is a circular barbell. If we're piercing my arm here, notice how flat that is inside there. But if we go down here, look how much curvature there is. We want to avoid that. If we create a situation like that, your body's going to probably want to shift it downward, or it's just going to start building up a bunch of scar tissue and cause a load of problems. So it needs to be oversized and a little too wide than what you actually need for that particular piercing. This is really predominant, especially in piercings where it's a long piercing, like a nipple piercing, and why, in many cases, initially healing the piercing out with a straight post, a barbell, etc., is a better option. Understand that with rings, you're always going to have a higher profile, and because you have to oversize it, that generally just increases the amount of profile. The more likely it is to get knocked around, the more movement you're going to see during the healing process. It's why in a lot of cases, not all cases, because there's some cases where, because of where the location of the piercing is, it fits better into the body. Other locations, like nipples, for example, where having a large ring in there that's like usually anywhere from 5/8 to an inch is going to cause a lot of movement back and forth and a lot of knocking around. It's not really the best option. That said, I've had thousands upon thousands of people heal their nipples out with rings. Navels too. After healing, in some cases, a slightly smaller ring can be put into the piercing. You have to keep in mind that we still have that rule where we want to keep that piercing as flat as possible. If you suddenly go from something that's shaped about like this to something that inside the piercing is shaped like this, it can cause a healed piercing to migrate, reject, or suddenly flare up and have issues and act like it's healing, or possibly even scarring or other problems. So keep in mind that you still kind of have to stick with a slightly larger piece of jewelry than just the width of the piercing. And this is why it's important to go see a piercer, especially if you're switching out to rings, and have them size it correctly for you. Okay, let's move on to the last type of jewelry, curved barbells. These are best used in areas of the body where it's almost a shallow heel. There isn't a lot of protrusion. A good example would be like eyebrows, rooks, to a degree Daves, anatrachuses, snugs, navel piercings, some genital piercings like Christina's and VCHs, where you want the balls to sit kind of offset. When sizing them, they should be slightly larger than the amount of tissue you go through, to allow for swelling, and also to allow that the ball's not just flat up against it and causing issues. Not so much oversizing as other piercings, especially like rings, for example, but you do want to consider that when you're picking out that jewelry. After the piercing heals, you can put in a slightly smaller one. However, you don't want it to the point where it's impacting or feels like it's not long enough for the two holes. In some cases, piercing with curved barbells is not the best option initially, especially in longer piercings, because you're creating that same problem that you have with rings. the arch is in there and it's too tight, and it will cause more movement and will cause other issues, including scarring. That's why straight posts, like for example, in longer piercings like tongue piercings and nipple piercings, where we're going through a lot of tissue straight across, it's much better to go with a straight than a curved. Because if you create this arch in there, it's going to create all the same problems that a ring would, including migration, scarring, excess movement, and possible rejection. Even when the piercing is healed, if you switch out from a straight post to a curved post, it can't affect it in the same way, just like rings could if you switch from a ring to that, etc. Well, that's about all I have to say about widths and how we decide. Hope you learned something. Hope you found it edifying. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos on education on body piercing and tattooing and other body arts, hit the subscription and ding the bells so that you're notified every single time we post something. If I brought up a question or I didn't explain something or there's something you'd like to add to this, please leave a comment. I generally answer them when I have time, and I love to talk to people. I love to spread information. That's the whole point of this channel. And if you have information you want to share with other people, please do so, even if it contradicts what I have to say. Check out our merch store. We have a bunch of new stuff in there. A bunch of new designs. T-shirts, leggings, coffee cups, all kinds of fun stuff. And Christmas is coming up, and you know you have people on your list that like body piercing and tattooing stuff. So, put them on there. Other than that, I hope all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see if your piercing needs in the future. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Go out there, do something, have some fun, and take care of yourself and the people around you, because we're all counting on you.